Good morning and welcome to the Treehouse. I am Mike Connor, Coach Connor, here in North Georgia in my kind of treehouse where I'm overlooking the real treehouse over there. And I welcome you to this episode of In the Treehouse, a time where I get to talk with business owners about their dreams, their treehouse, where they're going in business, their challenges, just having some fun, authentic conversations, and hopefully you learn from their experiences. My guest today is a good friend of mine, and we've known each other for several years now. Been through thick and thin in a lot of ways, and just a guy that I admire a lot, Chris Slaughter with CSS Transportation and a couple other ventures that you've been involved in. And so we'll talk all about that. But before I do that, I do want to give shout out to the sponsors of this show. First off, Action Coach, my company, who is backing this. And we do this because we believe in small businesses. This week, by the chance, did you know this week is Small Business Week?
Absolutely.
So it's a great week, and that's what I love doing is working with small businesses. It's been, the small business is the lifeblood of our economy. We employ more people in this country than the big businesses do. It is, this is what makes our country go is small businesses. And so my company loves working with them, making them more successful, helping them to employ more people, helping them to make more money, get more freedom, more time. And if that's something you're interested in, I would love to talk with you as a business owner as well, so that we can do that for you. My other sponsor, of course, is LinkedIn, Fist Bump, and they help you to build your reputation into revenue. So they use different ways in which you are becoming the expert in your field. You are building your reputation and then taking that reputation and turning it into revenue. What a better idea. You know what you do well. Why don't you make money off of it? So give Fist Bump a call, click them, and get some money for yourself. So all the housekeeping is done. Chris, it's good to have you back up here.
It's great to be here.
You haven't been up here in the house for a couple months yet. We had a little party here a couple months ago, and that was fun. But glad to have you back.
Absolutely. Didn't get to experience the outdoors as much because it was
cold
at the time.
It was cold that night.
Definitely enjoy being here. Nice breeze coming through here outside in the treehouse.
Yeah. So I ask everybody who comes on the show the first question: when you were a kid, right, 6, 8, 10, however old, what was your treehouse? And what were you dreaming about doing when you were a kid?
That's an easy one right there. I mean, I in my younger years, house full of cars. I mean, every die-cast car that you could trip over was there.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And that was just always my dream. I enjoy cars. I study cars. I just love the different arenas that you can get into involving them. And that's what really led me to the industry.
Yeah. So were you making models? Were you collecting Matchbox or Hot Wheels?
Collecting Matchbox, building models and so forth. Having competitions with my cousins about cars driving down the road. Oh, that's a 98 such and such that has a such and such engine in it. Just so many aspects.
Knowing everything about it. Yeah. Wow. What was at that age? What was the one that you wanted?
At that age, that was around the time that the Lexus LS came out.
Okay.
The LS 400. It was to compete against Mercedes and BMW and so forth. And I mean, just the coolest car. In regards to the styling, the comfort, and how it was advertised. And so it became one of those kind of iconic cars. Like, I'm gonna have those one day. So
we'll get back to that, I'm sure. So, but for me, relating this, the very first car that I ever noticed right? And I was probably 5, 6 years old. My dad owned a hardware store, small business owner himself. Um, it was in like a strip mall, right? And I remember I was in my mom's car and we were leaving the parking lot, and this absolutely beautiful car drove into the parking lot. And I was like, drop dead. I got to have one of those.
Right.
Jaguar XKE.
Oh yes.
You know, and this was back in the 60s because I'm a lot older than you.
I couldn't tell.
But it was, and so ever since then, my dream has been a 1963 Jag XKE, right. That long nose and all. So car. I mean, we're a few years apart, but that's very cool. Yeah.
The styling in automobiles, they seem to get an eye appeal from all of the arenas.
So. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And then so that was where were you living then?
In Macon, Georgia.
In Macon.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. A lot of folks I know from Macon.
Right.
That's pretty cool. But you didn't stay in Macon.
No, didn't stay in Macon. Traveled quite a bit actually. Both of my parents were in the military. So bounced around. Been out of the country.
Yeah.
So after my parents retired, came back to Georgia. Where I did graduate from high school and then pursued a career, in college, moved out of Macon up into the metro Atlanta area and been here ever since.
And I don't want to jump there yet because I know that military experience formulated you in some real significant ways. Some people respond very good to bouncing all over the place.
Right.
Some people don't. But I mean, tell me, what were some of the places and how did that formulate your worldview?
Right. Well, it definitely gave me a lot of exposure to different diverse, areas. I think growing up as a military brat and traveling, of course, there's the scrutiny of, oh, you're always traveling. You got to meet new friends, this, that, and the other, but the experience that you get behind it, the different cultures that you get involved in. As I grew up as a child, I didn't really mate myself to a certain culture or a certain type of upbringing, if that makes sense. It's like no one can identify me as a down south country boy, because they'll hear me talking. It's like, well, I'm not really sure where you're from. It's like can't pick up on the accent. It's like, well, kind of picked it up everywhere. Been to Germany, been to Japan, been to California, been to Texas. It's just to name a few. And it's like just being involved in those different crowds.
What was your favorite? What's your favorite place?
I would say El Paso.
Really?
Yeah, El Paso. Climate was always great. The atmosphere. Well, we stayed on base, so kind of limited to the exposure, if that makes sense. But I mean, some of the best years of my life were in El Paso.
Really?
Growing up with my family, my older brothers, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Being able to just experience, just the diversity in the areas. So.
Yeah. And being in Texas, that's where your love of hats came in, I'm sure.
Well,
I don't have my cowboy hat on. My producer told me I had my cowboy hat on. She said, I can't see your face, so I had to take my cowboy hat off. But your hat is beautiful.
I appreciate that. I do have a love for hats. I have quite a few of them. Whatever outfit, let's find the hat to match it and go with it. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. So the diversity thing as well. And we've talked about that and how I think you phrased it once. By growing up in this military environment, you really grew up colorblind.
Yeah.
I mean,
tell
absolutely.
Me about
that and how that impacts you now.
I see people for who they are, as far as let's have that conversation, personality and so forth. I'm not looking at skin color. I'm not looking at where you came from or anything like that. I rarely even think about it. When I see you as a person.
Yeah.
I think that my upbringing really instilled that into me. to where it's, I'm not antiquated to, okay, I'm only going to deal with, this person or that type of person or anything like that. And that also extends out to gender as well. I mean, it's like, I want to know who you are as a person, not from a visual perspective, but, who are you?
Yeah.
And that's where I gain my perception from. How are we going to interact? Where do I place you in my life?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and really being to that point, it's like, how can we do business together? This other stuff is secondary to just having this, business relationship.
Right.
So cool. So they retired. You came back, Georgia, graduated high school down in Macon.
Down in Macon.
Okay, and then moved up to Atlanta. What year was it?
That was 2002.
Okay.
Yeah. Moved up here and started my life.
Yeah.
Started my life. Went to school for IT. Graduated from there. Worked for IBM for several years. Then changed careers.
Yeah.
Got into the automotive industry.
Yeah.
And have been enjoying it since.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what was your first dip into that automotive industry?
My first dip into the automotive industry was in 2009. Okay. 2009, got laid off from IBM as a result of a Lenovo buying out the IBM consumer brand.
Yeah.
And I decided to make a career change. I wanted to see, explore, what else do I want to do?
Yeah.
And, my childhood dream kind of came back. I was like, cars.
Yeah.
Do something with cars. And so I was in this loop of deciding what do I want to do in the automotive industry? Do I want to sell cars? Do I want to fix cars? What do I want to do? And to tell you how long ago this was, I was up one morning, 2:00 in the morning, scrolling through Craigslist, looking at job postings. And I saw a position for a tow truck operator. And the amount of excitement that came over me over a tow truck operator, most people are like, tow truck operator, it's nothing to get excited about.
Yeah.
But, I'm like, whoa, I can touch cars.
Yeah.
I can deal with cars. And on top of that, I can help people.
Yeah.
And so reached out to this company, showed an interest, trained with the company. And next thing you know, 2 weeks later, I'm in a tow truck towing cars.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, so much joy behind it, being able to not only help people, but also it's funny. I've found that a lot of people are not educated on the very vehicle they own.
Really?
So I found a lot of opportunities where I'm educating, the customer on operations of their vehicle.
Yeah.
And it brought an overwhelming feel of satisfaction being able to do that.
Yeah.
And so in that field, the company that I work for, they quickly recognized the management capabilities behind my background experience and so forth. And shortly thereafter, I'm no longer in a truck, which okay, and I'm in the office now. It's like so now I'm running the operations. I'm learning the gist of the towing industry and stuff like that. And I'm like, this is turning out to be something very cool.
Yeah.
I wonder where I can go with this.
Yeah.
And I mean, one thing led to another.
Yeah.
I'm managing one company. I get recognized by another towing operation, and I merge over there and start running their operations. Yeah. And like I said, it's been a continuous
growth path.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so that then grew into CSS.
Absolutely.
And CSS was founded when?
2016. In 2016, I decided to venture off and start my own operation. No business experience at all. I'm a first generation business owner. So it's kind of like, okay, how am I going to do this? I want to do it. I've already shown that I can do it just by managing the other companies.
Yeah.
And so took a leap of faith.
Yeah.
Got out there, opened the operation, and started in my 2005 Toyota Camry. It's like, wait a minute, towing company, Toyota Camry doesn't go together. So. But it started, I in that Toyota Camry, I was doing roadside assistance, tire changes and jump starts, fuel deliveries. To supplement in between that, I also did Uber and Lyft services out of that same vehicle.
You still have it too, right?
I still have it.
Yeah.
Still have it.
Yeah.
You know, still I drive from here to California right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it quickly segued into an operation that started gaining traction and growing.
Yeah.
Within that same year, I purchased my first tow truck.
Uh-huh.
By that second year, I purchased a second tow truck, and then from there on, I mean, just started adding to the fleet, adding more employees, and adding more accounts to where this is now a recognized service in the area. That's gaining some positive traction. And here we are.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you and I came to know each other 3 years ago, something like that, right? When you were kind of going through some transitions in your business, and I can't remember exactly how we met. Do you remember?
I do. So while I was growing my operation, I discovered something that wasn't very apparent to me. I discovered the power of networking.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I started attending various networking events in the area, and running into individuals that not only we're able to relate in things in relation to business, but also be able to advocate, be able to refer, be able to give suggestions. Maybe take this road as opposed to that road, and so forth. Introduce new ideas. And so I was introduced to business coaching. And I'll just have to say it was the missing ingredient to growing an operation. I mean, if you don't have a business coach, I mean, I don't know what you're doing if you're running a business. I mean, it's like the cheat code.
I like that. So, I may have to trademark that. Right. Business coach. It's like the cheat code.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I got introduced to you, and I mean, we met.
Now I remember it was the West Cobb Business Association.
Yep. Absolutely. And I mean, from there, I'll tell you, it's been an eye opener. Challenged me in the way that I run the operation and how I grow the operation.
I remember early on, some of what we talked about was how you run the business, right? And getting to that cheat code.
Right.
If I can tell a little bit of old stories.
Absolutely.
I remember us in one of our early coaching sessions, me asking you for your management reports. Right. And your P&L and your cash flow and all, and you saying, I get them every month, but I'm afraid to look at them. And I was working through that. Right. And it's like, okay, that's your homework this week is get over your fear of looking at them. And here's how you will learn what they actually mean. Right. And you'll know how to read them.
Absolutely.
Right. And you took that up.
Absolutely.
That's one thing I have to say about you, Chris, is you truly have such passion about your business and wanting it to grow. You are the one who drives. It's like, how can I learn more? How can I want to be the best at what I do. And so you went out there and, by the next time that we met, you had your reports. You're like, okay, here they are. I'm still don't fully understand them, but you could probably tell the story better than me.
Yeah. I mean, management reports, I have an accounting team. They send them to me every month. Used to open the email. Okay. Yeah. That looks pretty. Close it back and never think about it again. Not realizing that was, the ammunition I needed to drive the business in whichever direction that it needed to go. And as I started studying those management reports more, looking into the financials, looking to the metrics and so forth, it helped me to understand the business more, to gauge, as to, okay, where do I need to pour into more, into the operation. And so, man, if they're very important.
and yet there are so many business owners out there who don't look at them. Who continue to build their businesses in a reactive way. I remember even you coming back to me, calling me and saying, I just found, I think it was $4,000 of charges that I was being double charged by somebody,
Yeah.
and being able to go back and get that money back,
Right.
But had you never looked at it, you would have never
Would have
realized.
never discovered it. I remember telling you early on, Michael. I was like, "Look, I'm looking at the bank account. There's money in there, and it stays on the positive end. I'm good."
Yeah.
And totally the wrong way of thinking about it.
Yeah.
It's not just about the money being in the bank account. It's about how's your cash flow looking.
Yeah.
What are your profit margins? What can you do to increase
Yeah.
to raise those profit margins?
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that without proper coaching, I probably would have never discovered or discovered way down the line, when it was kind of like, okay, did I just waste 6 years trying to figure this out?
Yeah. Yeah. And I never, I don't like, but I saw something. The growth of a business owner who uses a coach versus the growth of a business owner and a business without a coach, it's just exponentially different. So that's my own personal plug. I'll get rid of it.
Right.
So you have done some remarkable things over the last couple of years, right? You've grown from a Corolla to a fairly big enterprise now.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a challenge. It's been some journeys. There's been celebration. There's been frustration.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, over the years, grown into an operation to where full fleet of vehicles. Full office staff with management team. Major contracts. Even dipping into the government contract arena.
Yeah.
So really put a name out there for the operation,
Yeah.
which is a showcase of the services that we've been able to provide.
Yeah.
We've been involved in the community. We've been involved in many industry events.
Yeah.
So starting from a Toyota Camry in the driveway, the garage of my house, to now on commercial property and offering all of these services to different sectors. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
To see that growth.
Yeah. In that growth, and you're seeing all of it, and it's been absolutely wonderful. What would you say has been some of your biggest learnings in that growth? And maybe some things it's like, oh wow, that probably wasn't the best thing. Maybe I shouldn't do that again. What have you learned?
Well, I would say that moving from being a manager of an operation and now becoming an owner of an operation, I learned more about people and how they respond to their position. If you have someone in a position and they understand their position and they understand what are the goals behind their position, you're going to get better results out of them, rather than you have someone in a position that's like, do this, do this, do this, and not really having a reason why behind you're doing it. It turns very robotic. There's no motivation behind it. So I would say that one of the biggest things I learned is how to communicate with the team in a way to keep them motivated. To drive towards the overall goal of the operation. And just relating their feels in regards to their personality. Okay, this person may not be the best at running reports and so forth, but let's figure out a way to where we can get the result that we're looking for, and show me the skill that you can put behind it in doing so.
I think that's right. And understanding your team and their skills and what they're good, and making sure that they're in the right place. So you've got a fairly good reputation out there. A lot of people know you, right? You've got a good LinkedIn following, right? In that, do you see sometimes people trying to ride your coattails?
I mean, I've got some people out there that want to, copy the process, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
There's, when you're setting an example, when you're building something from, essentially nothing. It You got people that's wondering, how are you doing it? How can this be duplicated? If
Yeah.
this can be duplicated.
Yeah.
And so I'm very open with the way that I run my operation in regards to networking and communicating with other business owners and stuff like that. And I believe that one of the things that is important in growing an operation is being able to share, that knowledge,
Yeah.
networking with other entrepreneurs, pouring information into
Yeah.
pouring value
Yeah.
into other entrepreneurs as well. Because I don't look at business as a competition per
Yeah.
se.
Yeah.
Of course, each operation has its own goals, but I look at this as a way to where let's learn from each other
Yeah.
on how we can build and grow,
Absolutely.
our businesses across various industries.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's one thing, knowing that there are other tow companies that you actually collaborate with,
Yeah.
even though you're in the same space.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of business owners don't fully understand that just because somebody does the same thing that you do, yeah, I mean, they're competition, but if you're building your business on who you are and your uniqueness, that person isn't necessarily competing with you.
Right.
So even though somebody else is towing, you know, it's not you.
Right.
So in that regard, what would how do you describe the uniqueness that you guys have at CSS versus the tow company that's down the road?
Right. Right. Well, I would say first, just based off of my IT background, I would say that we're an operation that incorporates a lot of technology.
Yeah.
That sets us apart from operations. I mean, when I schedule a meeting with a potential client and I sit down with them and I go over our systems and how we monitor our trucks and how we can see our drivers and where they're at and know what they're doing at what time, how we can, we're going to tell you what time we're going to be there. We're not going to guess. We're going to tell you because we can see it on the map. You don't have to call us to place a service call. You can go through a portal and submit it online, or you can text it to us.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, I've never seen this from a towing company.
Yeah.
So I expect you to show up with a log paper that I fill out, and you hand me a paper receipt, and I hope for the best.
Yeah.
No, we provide a full experience.
Yeah.
When we provide services. And a lot of our clients really appreciate that, the documentation. Our drivers, they take pictures of the vehicle, before they touch it, while it's on the truck, when it's unloaded, and the client gets that information, instantaneously through our systems.
Yeah.
So that really sets us apart, just the amount of technology that we've incorporated into the operation.
Well, and even taking that a step further, I'm going to, put a plug in for you, because with some of your contracts that you've had, you go the step further even to give them a lot of that detail so that they understand how they are making more money, or maybe like they're not having to spend as much money on the tows because you're showing the efficiency that you're providing over what they would be doing with other business owners. And you don't have to necessarily do that.
Absolutely.
But, I think that's something key that anybody who's listening that may have a fleet or, any government officials or anything like that, it's like, you provide data to help them to support what they're doing.
Absolutely. I've dealt with major government contracts, and unsolicited, I would send them monthly analytical reports, on how we are performing under their contract. What areas that we've observed to where there maybe can be some improvements on our end, or on how this contract operates. And I mean, we've received tremendous positive feedback behind that. We've had these government entities come to us to ask for data so that they can assess other towing companies. So it's very important to not only just do what you're asked to do, but go a little above and beyond and,
Yeah.
and provide some additional insight.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's one of your uniquenesses. You provide almost a transparency in the industry where there are other companies out there who don't necessarily like that transparency.
Right.
They want things to kind of be behind the curtain and don't question us.
Right.
But you're like, no, look, we're up front. We're going to tell you everything. This is how it goes.
Absolutely.
And that level of integrity is I think a big selling point. For
Yeah,
you.
and it builds an extended level of trust.
Yeah.
With the clients that you're dealing with. I mean, if I'm providing you the data without you even asking, it kind of it gives you that extra assurance of okay, I'm good here. Oh my goodness. Let me go and talk to my management team because here's something that was provided to us that maybe we can improve on, or maybe we can change, in the way that we handle our contracts.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I want to switch a little bit. We had some questions come in over LinkedIn prior to us coming on.
Okay.
People wanted to know, in your rapidly growing business, how do you take care of your team and make sure they don't get burned out?
Right.
So,
well, you have to understand your team. You have to understand each person in their role and the extent of their role. Always looking for feedback.
Yeah.
From a perspective of, okay, how can I help you to perform your task?
Yeah.
What can I do to make your task easier? What can I do to make your task more efficient? Understanding each individual's personal challenges.
Yeah.
In addition to what's assigned within the job, because if we all have our personal lives in addition to what our careers are, and I think that you have to have an understanding of that to be able to relate and to accommodate each individual. Really listening for feedback is a key thing. When you're in an owner role and you're looking at certain things to get done, it's not just the way that you created the menu.
Yeah.
You want to get that feedback. You want to get those new ideas. You want to enable the person that is in that position to own that position.
Yeah.
And create essentially their own flow or their own ideas of how to get this task done. I've learned over the years that I am not the smartest person in my operation.
Yeah.
Yes, I am the decision maker, but sometimes, some extra consult from the people that specialize in those different areas, they help encourage that decision.
Yep.
And not allowing your employee to shine through and show those skills. It could limit the growth of the operation.
Yeah. The other thing, and I think one of the things too with your team is, I mean, your industry is very blue collar, right? And a lot of folks in your industry, they don't have post high school education. They're I mean, smart people, but they haven't, they're not professional
Right.
types of folks. I mean, but you are committed to their growth as well, right? And I think a lot of maybe folks think, oh, tow truck driver, they just come in and they drive the truck and they go home, right? That hasn't been your approach.
No. I mean, how vehicles have evolved, you can't just hook a chain up to the car and pull it up on the truck and hope for the best.
Yeah.
The operator has to have knowledge of that vehicle.
Yeah.
And, over the years, we've worked with pretty much all the vehicle manufacturers to learn, the towing, the proper towing techniques of these vehicles.
Yeah.
We're in the operation, we have monthly safety meetings where we talk about these different techniques. We get feedback from the drivers, what type of challenges are they facing in the field and how they can overcome those challenges. It's not just, okay, here's the truck, here's the car, go tow it and hope for the best. No, let's give you some ammunition. Let's give you something extra to where, not only are going to be able to do this job, but be able to do this job and show, the client or customer that you're in front of that, this is the first time I've dealt with this. Not only am I familiar, but let me educate you some on it as well, as far as what my techniques are that I'm using while I'm handling the
Yeah. Well, and your dispatcher, I love Kate.
vehicle.
Yeah, but was out at the shop a few weeks ago, probably been a couple months ago, and I remember coming in, and she starts kind of getting on me,
Right.
right? And it was fun ribbing. But one, I think the idea that it's not our relationship isn't just between you and me.
Right.
The relationship that I get to have with CSS
Mhm.
goes beyond just this, coach owner relationship,
Right.
right? Talk about how you have embedded that into the team, in ways of helping them to really grow themselves.
Right. Right. Well, I would say that I've really molded my team to become more proactive with their task as opposed to
Uh-huh.
reactive. I've incorporated daily goals as far as them, knowing what their tasks are
Yeah.
and what the goals are behind those tasks, and holding themselves accountable to completing them. I can remember a time where it was kind of we were winging it every day.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the fire in the room for the day, and how are we going to put the fire out?
Yeah.
Type of deal, as opposed to coming into that day with a plan already in mind and
Yeah.
executing on that plan.
Yeah.
One thing that and I'm sitting over here laughing inside as you're telling me this about Kate. One thing I incorporated with her and the rest of the team is setting your task for the next day.
Uh-huh.
And one of the worksheets that
Yeah.
that I presented to them that we talked about was eating that frog.
Yeah.
And I mean, Kate was like, "What is this? Why are you handing me? What is this? A frog? What about?" And so then I challenged her. I said, "Well, I want you to read the book."
Yeah.
And so she read through the book, and she gained a different level of perspective on what I was asking her to do, which enabled her to reinforce that to the rest of the team.
Yeah.
And get them on board with it. And so, now as we're coming into the day, I've got Kate, I've got the drivers, I've got the dispatchers. They all already have their tasks laid out.
Yeah.
And it makes a more efficient day, as opposed to it's kind of fishing for what are the duties that are called upon us to do on demand during the day.
Yeah. Well, and I think that to that question that came in, how do you avoid burnout?
Mhm.
I think that's you hit it right there. It's
Right.
like if they know what they need to get done,
Mhm.
and they set reasonable expectations on a daily basis,
Mhm.
they're not going to get burned out.
Right.
You know?
And it's one key thing you said: reasonable expectations.
Yeah.
When I first introduced this, I had some people on the team, and they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna do this, and 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 I'm gonna do it all in 3 hours." And it's like, wait a minute now. I appreciate you, trying to be Superman, but let's keep it reasonable, because you don't want to assign too many tasks to where now you experience that burnout. It has to be reasonable. They have to be goals that you set to keep you motivated.
Yeah.
If you set a goal that is kind of challenging to obtain, you lose that momentum.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden the goal is no longer a goal. It's a nuisance.
Yeah.
And so, setting those small goals, holding yourself accountable to them, celebrating, the accomplishment of those small goals, really, pushes you to the next step. And that's one thing that we do in the operation. We do a lot of celebrating. We collectively as a team, whenever we see someone accomplish something, or whenever we see something that's innovative from the employee, we as a team, we talk about that.
Yeah.
We congratulate. We shout them out.
Uh-huh.
And that's one way of moving forward. That's one way of kind of not necessarily eliminating the burnout, but stepping further away from it. Because okay, I've got a sense of relief.
Yeah.
I've hit this target. Okay, what's the next target I can hit? Because I'm motivated now.
Yeah. That's awesome. And the other thing that you've done is establish kind of almost not that it's an employee-owned business, but an element of ownership for all the employees that they have. They have to take ownership of their particular piece that
Yeah.
they're doing, right?
Absolutely.
And that even coming into, you have developed, a culture that everybody is out there and promoting the business.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're all involved in driving the operation forward. Um, Giving each person a sense of responsibility of putting in an effort to help the overall picture, it again, it drives that motivation.
Yeah.
If I have an employee that doesn't really know why they're there as opposed to a specific task,
Yeah.
then that task becomes very robotic.
Yeah.
There's no innovation behind the task. There's in comparison to, okay, here's the task, here's the goal behind it, here's the overall outcome of what it can do for the team.
Yeah.
It gives that person more motivation to not only just perform that task, but how can I do this task better? How can I make it more efficient?
Yeah.
How can I innovate it?
Yeah.
So
And even, there's out in the business world, people say, everyone, all your employees should be selling all the time. And everyone's a salesperson. But there's I think probably a lot of people, especially in blue collar, it's like, yeah, well, these folks aren't truly salespeople. We need them to be tacticians and get the job done.
Mhm.
You've turned that upside down.
No, I mean, everyone in my operation is involved in sales. I mean, the management staff, the dispatching staff, even the drivers out there on the field. When a driver gets out there and they tow a vehicle, and they're providing that customer that professional experience, that we're out here to provide a solution to a problem that you're facing right now. That's advertisement in itself.
Yeah.
That's promoting business in itself.
Yeah.
And you take the extra component on it, and the driver is having that conversation, handing out that business card, pointing to the social media, tell your friends about us and so forth.
Yeah.
That driver is now selling.
Yeah.
That driver has created a lead that could turn into, the next big client.
Right.
So yeah, I've challenged every person in every department in my team to involve themselves in, put in your effort to complete the piece of this puzzle to make the operation, where we all want it to be.
Yeah. And I think that's, that is a lot of what makes CSS so successful, is this team that you have built, this culture that you have built, that, you have a successful business, but it's not just you, that you drive it down to everyone. The economy is like, some people are happy with the economy these days. Some people aren't. Right. We're kind of in this funny stage, and we've been in this funny stage for several months. Right. And eventually maybe things will normalize, or maybe this is the new normal, and we just figure out how to live in it. But all that being said, well, before we go there, I want to, you started another venture about 6 months ago or so. Right. Then I know it's kind of just picking up. We're not sure if it's going to go or not. Right. But tell a little bit about that venture and what that one is.
Right. Well, in my towing operation, while working government contracts, specifically with police departments, I observed a problem in the local community.
Yeah.
There has been an increasing problem with illegal street activities with vehicles. These what they refer to them as street takeovers, where you have these various car clubs or people that appear to be some type of a car club, and they're out here causing a public disturbance.
Yeah.
They're blocking off intersections, and they're performing these stunts with their vehicles. They're showing off their cars in these public parking lots, which in some cases they're interrupting,
Yeah.
the business operations of those commercial plazas and so forth. And as a result, a lot of these people are getting in trouble. The cars are getting impounded. They're
Yeah.
getting cited and so forth. And I kind of took a step back, and I'm like, wait a minute, okay, I kind of see what's going on.
Yeah.
Because as a child, I love cars. I
Yeah.
love every aspect of them. And there's other people out there that love cars as well. But maybe there's not a proper outlet
Yeah.
in for these people to really
Enjoy it.
express their
Yeah.
their enjoyment in vehicles. And so that's where I came up with this new business idea of an operation that I opened called the Auto Hangar.
Uh-huh.
Because the Auto Hangar is an automotive event venue
Yeah.
this is a center point for people to have car meets, car shows,
Yeah.
car reveals. I mean, and we've actually expanded out into doing more things like film production, commercials,
Yeah.
and man, a Koi Club is having an event there.
Yeah.
I mean, just an awesome venue for the car community to come into a controlled location, have their fun with restrictions, of
Sure.
course. And, so now that we're not out here on the road causing, me
Yeah.
and you to be 30 minutes late to our appointment because
Yeah.
we're, watching something that we necessarily didn't want to be involved in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I think it's cool. And that's, you know, certainly meeting a need of the community and helping things to helping everybody in that situation. I think it's just great.
absolutely.
And I know, you know, that may change. Again, it's 6 months in. We don't. We're working through that
Right.
and that whole thing, and there may be some new opportunities there in the future, and growing that. So I certainly want to make sure you mentioned the auto hanger
Right.
today. Because
Absolutely.
that's a cool other business that you've got going.
Right.
So yeah. So kind of wrapping things up. Um, what what's your next big dream?
Hmm. You know, we could sit here for another hour talking about that. I would say that the next big thing that I'm going to get into is real estate. I've been studying it for quite a while. It's a good, it's a natural step
Yeah.
in entrepreneurship. And that's something that I'm really wanting to get into. I'm going to get into, and to also help drive other businesses in the area.
Yeah.
Because getting into the commercial real estate arena and so forth. Now providing a service to other
Yeah.
businesses and helping them to establish and grow and so forth. Second thing of mine that I'm going to start doing, which I hadn't even talked to you about this, so surprise, I'm going to start doing courses with individuals, that want to do very specific roles in regards to entrepreneurship. I've had so many people over the years reach out to me, Chris, how did you build this towing operation? How do you do this and so forth? So,
Yeah.
I want to start educating people that
Sure.
may not have had that background in
Yeah.
entrepreneurship. Me as a first generation business owner, I didn't have it.
Yeah.
I had to learn through so many ways
Yeah.
on how to do it the way that is
Yeah.
going to drive it forward.
Yeah.
And I want to make that a little easier for the next person.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. Sounds good. And for those entrepreneurs out there, or the small business owners out there, um, what's a message you would give them, as far as I mean, many people they may have the dream of I mean, you got to live out your dream of playing with cars,
Right.
right? And you play with cars every day. And if they're there and they're struggling to get to live their dream, what's something you'd say to them?
I would say, push forward, involve yourself in the right room with the right people. A lot of times our lack of drive comes from our surroundings without us even knowing.
Yeah.
I found myself that involving myself with other entrepreneurs that have goals bigger than mine,
Yeah.
help me to really drive forward and understand that, I'm not in the worst case scenario, or this really isn't the biggest challenge.
Yeah.
There's, have a conversation with somebody, and my challenge that I've been thinking of for over a week gets resolved in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Just speaking with the right person. So I would say, being solution driven.
Yeah.
Let's not, really drown ourselves into the challenges, or how am I going to get this done, and so forth. Let's kind of, let's turn that a little bit into okay, where's the solution for this?
Yeah.
Who do I need to talk to figure this out?
Yeah.
How can I get assistance with this? What additional resource do I need?
Yeah.
Because for every challenge there's a solution.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of focusing your mind on what those solutions are.
Yeah. Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thanks. I appreciate your time here.
Well,
coming out and joining me here in the treehouse. Us getting to hang out a little bit.
right.
Yeah. So
I do what I can.
you're so much fun. So, yeah. So if Chris is, how can people get in touch with you if they want to?
So, social media, CSS Transportation. You can follow us on Facebook. You can follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram at CSS Tow. It's at CSS Tow for the auto hanger. You can follow us on those same channels as well. At the auto hanger ATL.
Yeah.
And you can reach out to me. Let's talk. I'm open to do business. I'm open to consult. I'm open to help.
Yeah.
Let's have a conversation. Let's talk about like-minded goals.
Sounds good. Absolutely. So thanks for coming.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. All right. Thank you all for joining us again. Again, I am Mike Connor, business coach up here, getting to work with great guys like Chris and so many other people. So appreciate you taking the time to watch us today, and we will see you again this time